The other day, I got a really good question from a science teacher about how they could build their students' vocabulary, and I wanted to pop in and answer it really quickly. So, I'm Karen Dudek-Brannan, and I help pediatric therapists to build better systems for handling their language therapy, specifically when it comes to SLPs and creating a system that supports their students' reading and literacy skills, and just figuring out where to start when it comes to language intervention. So I have a webinar that I have available for people to watch. It's specifically for SLPs, but sometimes other professionals like teachers will hop on to the training because they want to learn about how to build their students' language skills as well. And so the other day, I had a question from a science teacher about what their role was in the process. And so I think, regardless of whether you're a teacher, an SLP, psychologist, social worker, reading specialist, or somebody else who's on the team that is responsible for supporting kids' literacy development, I think it's really important to understand where everybody can fit together in this process, because it's one thing to know what you should be doing when you have a student in front of you. It's another thing to understand just bigger picture what needs to be going on with the team. And I think that that's really important. So what I told this teacher was that, so as a science teacher, obviously your role would be to deliver the curriculum. There's specific units that you have to address, specific material that needs to be covered, that kids need to understand, within each year. And so, yes, there are a lot of other skills embedded into that. There's vocabulary, there's reading comprehension, there's all sorts of other things that are worked in. Kids are having to apply a lot of those vocabulary skills and those comprehension skills while they are working on science. But really the thing that we're leading with is the actual content. If you are somebody who is delivering one of those content areas, science, social studies, or, there's a number of other ones, but elementary, those are the two big ones. So really, if you're somebody who is teaching one of those content areas in that class, that's the primary role. And obviously you want to pull in some of these other things as well. Whereas somebody like a speech pathologist or other interventionist who is responsible for building kids' vocabulary so that they can actually access the curriculum when they're in classes like science, they have a different role in the process. What they want to do is address vocabulary that's going to be useful throughout the entire year, and also build the language and the strategies and the metacognitive skills that are going to be required in order for them to continue to learn new vocabulary and apply those word learning strategies. So there's a little bit of teaching direct vocabulary, but there's a lot of work on just looking at language differently, using strategies, and learning how to apply prior knowledge to learn new information, because that's what they're going to have to do. So again, as an SLP, what you would want to be doing is looking at things like tests or word lists and kind of look for those words that are high utility, that are coming up over and over again. And then you're going to want to layer that with some specific word work that's going to help kids to increase their awareness of different parts of words. And so that's going to teach them strategies for learning words on top of just, directly addressing specific vocabulary words. So it's less about delivering specific content units and trying to stay synced up with what the teachers are doing, and more about what are going to be words that are going to be useful for kids across contexts. So when it comes to the science teacher, as far as what they can be doing, obviously their primary role would be to deliver that science curriculum. But what they can be doing as a good team member is working together with the speech pathologist and the other practitioners to kind of pull out, what are some concepts and skills that are going to be useful to the students year round to be successful in their classroom. That's going to help the SLP or other person who's working with that student. Maybe it's a special ed teacher as well. That's going to help those people to figure out what are some high utility words and concepts that they can be addressing across the board, across the entire year, so that the students can be successful in the classroom. And then what they can also be doing is sharing their curricular materials so that the SLP can kind of take a look at some of the vocabulary that's coming up over and over again. So, sharing some of the materials that the other practitioners can be aware of what's going on in their classroom. And then they can also just again, communicate regularly with their speech pathologist or other practitioners to just get an understanding of what's going on in their session so that they can reinforce it in their classroom. Again, their primary role is to deliver the curriculum, but then they can kind of pull in and, figure out some ways that they can support what that SLP is doing and help the student apply some of those strategies directly in their classroom. So again, that's not necessarily what they're going to lead with when they're thinking about how they plan their lesson, but it is something that they can pull in. Whereas the SLP, it's the other way around. They're going to lead with the strategy and lead with, how can I learn these high utility words? And then they might pull in some of those curricular concepts and things like that. They might not necessarily lead with that, but that's something that they can pull in. So really, it's kind of that starting point, which is that's kind of the main difference there is what's my main starting point and my main focus versus what am I going to kind of pull in and help reinforce that other people are doing. So really, when we're hitting it from different angles, this is what allows us to give kids that good support across the board. And I think that even if you don't exactly know how to apply this in your classroom or in your therapy session right away, what's really important is that you're having those regular conversations with those other people on your team so that you can learn more about what they do, because that's what's going to help you to problem solve together through that process. So as I said, this question came up on my webinar for speech pathologists, which is designed to help them learn a framework for language therapy that helps them to teach their students the language skills that are needed to support reading, writing, academic skills, and eventually vocational skills once they are done with school. So it's going to help build those language comprehension skills and those vocabulary and word learning strategies that they're going to need in order to be successful in those academic environments. That's going to be really important for kids to be successful in school and in life, because it's going to help them to support their literacy skills. This is an area where SLPs do not necessarily have one specific framework they can follow, which makes their job very confusing because it is a huge area of need and a huge part of their caseload. So that's why I've created my 5-component training to help give them a streamlined process so that they know where to start when creating that system and creating their protocols that they use to support their students. So if you are a speech pathologist, you are welcome to check out that training. What you're going to want to do is go to drkarenspeech.com/language therapy. And I'll also share a link to the training in the description of this video. Again, that's drkarenspeech.com/language therapy. And you can go to that page to register for the free training, or just check the link in the description. So this is for you if you're an SLP and you want to show up to your language therapy sessions with a plan so that you're confident that you know that you're helping